The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie. We are now delighted to announce our second sponsor of the podcast. Harper Finlay are a professional service recruitment company operating nationwide and are dedicated to helping people find their dream job.
So delighted now to be joined by Ciaran McGrath and Barry Cullinane. Just to look ahead, I suppose, now we know the meeting that Galway are going to play Roscommon in the Connacht semi-final on April 23rd in Dr. Hyde Park. And next week, on Monday the 17th of April, we have a preview in on Pucon. And on the panel that night, it'll be Shane Kern, Keith Higgins, David Wynne and Gary Sice. That kicks off at 8 o'clock and everyone is welcome on the night. Before we get into it, lads, can't really start anywhere else other than New York and Leitrim. 3 Galway men involved: Johnny Glynn, Adrian Bailey and Owen Kern. Gizzy, watching it that on Saturday night, it was just some scenes. It was actually some game of football between New York and Leitrim.
Yeah, very exciting, and obviously this was something you don't really see in the GAA anymore. I suppose a lot of the sport of the guys playing and stuff, so it was big for them, and you could see at the end even like Johnny Glynn, who has won so much and winning All Ireland with Galway and the hurlers, him embrace one of the ladies at the end. Obviously she's some official, belonged to New York GAA. It just showed what it meant to him, and he's obviously one of them type of guys that when he's involved in something, he gives it 100% and he's all about it. And at the minute, he's all about New York GAA. So you'd be delighted for him. And then obviously Owen and Adrian are 2 good lads as well, and you'd be delighted for them as well.
It was probably coming for a few years, Barry, I would say, with New York, because they ran Sligo very close last year, ultimately lost by 4 points. The Rossies a couple of years before that, so they probably were building towards this result.
Yeah, and Gizzy, you know this as well, like Gaelic Park is a difficult enough place to play in. It's tight and it's the AstroTurf, and the markings are that little bit different, so it all adds to it, and it was a perfect storm for them. And you know, you would feel sorry for Leitrim, you know, but they were going down they were really going into the Lions Den, and I saw someone, I think it was the New York manager, tweeting about like how on paper New York had more championship experience than that Leitrim team. And you know, when you look at the likes of Owen Kern and Bill Maher, Adrian Varley and these lads, Shane Carty, like they're fine footballers. You know, Owen Kern, where he might for the opposition, he might frustrate you at times, but I tell you, if you're going to war, he's a fella that you want with you. And like last year, I saw himself and saw Tillan and down in the championship, and he had just come back, and himself and Tom O'Culhane had probably, to me, and I saw a good few of the championship games in Galway last year, one of the real good battles, that old traditional battles of man on man, and you know, where Tomo kicked, I think, 4 great points. Owen Kern would have been delighted with his day. And coming out of that, I thought Pádraig might have a look at him again or have a word with him again, but it obviously didn't materialise. And Adrian Varley is a guy I would feel maybe is a talent that Galway didn't get enough out of. I think he's a super footballer. From what I know of him and his brother Paul, they're really, really good guys. And would have been a huge addition just around the place to that New York panel. And as I said, throw in the likes of Bill Maher, Johnny Glynn and his experience, and it was made for them. And what I would say is, when they left to go for their celebrations, which I went on for a few days, like it's a big advantage to them, or a real bonus to them, knowing that their next game is Sligo, and they will prepare 100% for that. And I think from listening to the New York manager, they can all come home first. There's no issues that way, and they'll be having a right cut at that and feel they have a great opportunity of getting to a Connacht final.
Yeah, the scenes at the end, even as Gizzy was saying there, where you see all the players run over and you just see Johnny Glynn in that one position, they were just remarkable scenes. It was a great start to kick off the championship. As we mentioned there, Gizzy, like they're coming over to play Sligo, which is going to be fascinating to see. If they win that, they're into the Connacht final, and they'll be guaranteed Sam Maguire football if they lose. They are not in the Tailteann Cup group stage, but they go into the preliminary quarter-final in the Tailteann Cup. So it's even going to be fascinating over the next few weeks now to see New York probably coming over and back a bit.
Yeah, and then I suppose you'd have the lads that we're talking about there, your Johnny Glynn's and Bill Maher's and the lads that Barry mentioned, like they're going to bring great experience. Like when they go back training, yeah, it's great fun beating Leitrim and winning that game, and but these boys are competitive and they're winners, so they're going to want to set that group down again, and they're going to come home and give Sligo a right good rattle. So yeah, they would have enjoyed a few days, but I think they'll come home in good preparation for the next game. It won't be a case where they'll fly in the night before or whatever. They'll do everything right. With them lads in the panel, they're going to demand that everything is done right. And Johnny Glynn seems to be the main leader in the pack, obviously. But you'll find that they'll give that Sligo game one right good rattle, and it's going to be interesting. Sligo will have their work cut out to get a result there as well.
Do you think they can give Sligo a rattle, Barry?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Leitrim Sligo game in the league was really tight. I think Sligo probably got a right good confidence boost from their big win in London. And weekends like that where everyone has to come together and they get a little bit of they get a couple of nights away and they get everyone back in the group. They can be really, really important to a team, and they have some fine players, and they've had a couple of really good weeks between the league and the championship. So confidence wise, they'll be on a high, and they'll know that no matter, and Gizzy's right, like New York will prepare perfectly for this because there's plenty of lads around the place that have really good experience. But a 5-6 hour flight in, no matter what, it's still going to take it out of the legs. And I think the message that Sligo will be having is like down the home stretch, the last 10 or 15 minutes, we should have it in the tank to push home. But the real, I suppose, crux of it is that they are there for the last 15 minutes and that they're not kind of chasing the game.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely have them that they're going into that one now with a game under their belt and huge momentum on their side. That takes place on Saturday, April 22nd between Sligo and New York. Just before we do get into the Galway seniors, obviously facing Roscommon in the Connacht semi-final. During the week, Gizzy, the Galway under-20s got a victory over Leitrim, 296 points, not pretty conditions, but got the result. Now eye up a final against Sligo and Mayo, and an important result because Galway similarly got caught at this stage last year against Mayo, and there seems to be momentum there on the back of winning the John Kearns Cup.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great that I'd follow that much, but I saw the programme on Twitter, and there seems to be a good spread of players from different clubs, which is always good to see. I know my own Corofin have 4 lads involved, and I know from playing with Brian Cogger and stuff, very good footballer, and it's hard to believe that he's still under 20, because I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago he was brought into the Corofin seniors. So he's well developed, and he's a good player for them to have. Then Bernard Cohen is another guy that Fitzy speaks very highly of. Fitzy's involved in the underage teams in Corofin. And Patrick Egan is another guy that Sicey talks very highly of. So I suppose if Fitzy and Sicey are talking highly of you, then you have something going for you. And Patrick would have been a guy that would have been coached by Sicey at primary school and stuff. So you can be sure if you're coached at that age by Sicey, it's going to benefit you down the line. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go. It'd be nice to see Galway Mayo play, especially with Morris and Ciaran Murphy involved with Mayo. It'd be a nice little battle between the sidelines. But there's no reason, when you look at the spread of players that Galway have, there's no reason why they can't be competitive right to the end of that competition, to be fair.
And there definitely is the makings of a great squad there at the moment, Barry. Probably one concern is Liam O'Canida from Spidale, who was ultimately flying it really in the John Kearns Cup. He's looked to pick up an injury, but there's there's still huge depth really when you consider there's a couple of the minors there from last year, and as Gizzy's saying there, some of even the curve in players, and you look at the team throughout, like it is a really strong squad.
Yeah, and Liam O'Connell is a really, really good player. And there's loads of them. And for me, like Gizzy's 3 kids, I've 2. It's hard to keep an eye on everything. But I was chatting to someone about this last week, is that at the moment Galway football is really, really strong, and our seniors are competitive. To me, they're in the top 2, if not 3 teams. Certainly, definitely 3, if not top 2, if not maybe the best team in the country at the moment. But there's no guarantee that means we're going to win in All-Ireland in the next couple of years. And the big challenge is what happens if we don't. So it won't be from lack of ability or lack of trying or whatever. And we don't have to look too far down the road to see a team that maybe has been competitive for so long and just hasn't got over the line. And the challenge for Galway football is what happens if we don't win in All-Ireland. We all expect that, with the management team that we have, and Pádraig with what he has done playing, and we know how competitive and driven and ambitious he is and his management team is and all the players are. But again, that doesn't guarantee success because you've lots of good teams around them as well. So to me, that the challenge then is that the under-20s and the academies and under-17s are producing players over and over again that can just keep things fresh and keep things competitive, because what you don't want is to happen Galway football again, where we had tremendous success in the late 90s, the early 2000s, and maybe it dipped. It took a while then to get back up to that level again. So what you want to have is a conveyor belt of players coming through, as Gizzy talked about, conditioned, ready for senior intercounty football, ambitious and driven, that keeps Galway at the top table no matter what we go on to win or what we go on to achieve, because that's where we want to be, and ultimately that's the goal for everyone, I think.
Is that the biggest challenge as well, do you feel, for Galway football at the minute, Gizzy?
Yeah, but I think the right guys are involved at the minute. Like Alan Glynn has huge experience and was a good footballer himself. He's young and ambitious, I'm sure, and knows what it takes. So, like, he's going to buy into all the aspects of it. Of the skills of the game, obviously, is important, but the strength and condition side of it, the analysis side of it, and then Ducky as well. He was involved when I played. I think, Barry, were you there in Mull's time? Ducky was a selector, so he has huge experience, and like, really, to be fair to the 2 guys, really good guys, really nice lads. That Ducky was very, very humble when he was involved with the Galway seniors. Always came over chatting to you, always had a smile, and you just enjoyed being around him. Really good guys. So I think the two guys involved in the major groups are the right guys at the minute, and there's a bit of continuity where they've continued on for a couple of years. So that's all good. I think chopping and changing managers and different selectors and trainers every year is no good for any team. So I think they've got that mix right at the minute, and hopefully they can keep that together for a while, and it bodes well, because everyone is playing, everyone wants to play, go minor now and go under 20. So that's a good sign.
And the conveyor belt definitely does seem to be there at the minute, Barry. And in fairness to the county board, like, even you talked there about strength and conditioning, but getting Setanta College now involved with, say, all the underage squads, and even up now into minors and 20s, like that's massive.
Yeah, and so, like, Des Ryan is the director of Setanta, and Gizzy, we'd have good experience with Des, and what an asset he is to anyone that he's involved in. And I was lucky enough to be involved with Bishopstown down here in Cork, and there's a fella called Ian Jones. He came back from the States to kind of take up a position with Setanta within Bishopstown, and has now gone on to kind of a national level, and he's I think overseeing a lot of what's going on, and he's an excellent fella as well. And if the coaches that are in Galway in terms of the SNC, buy into what he's trying to do and his experience, then Galway in a really, really good place. And it showed great foresight, and it showed great ambition by Galway to go and get that and get it in place, because it's really, really important. Gizzy talked about Alan and Ducky, and they're brilliant guys, and Alan showed great, I suppose, maturity last year in terms of not panicking, with a couple of defeats, just constantly trying to learn and develop, and got the results from it. And what I get from Ducky is that, like, there's no ego, and it's all about Galway football. He's ambitious, but he knows that he's developing people for, he could be the next Galway senior manager, who knows, but he's developing people for what's there at the moment, and a really, really good fella. So it's really important we've good people over the team, but really important the county board gives support to all of that as well. And at the moment it looks like it's well run, and it's a good ship, and it's reaping the rewards of it.
Absolutely. And the 20s will face Mayo or Sligo at that game tonight. So that's who they'll face in the Connacht final. So that's another one to look forward to for Galway football. Gizzy, Galway and the Rossies, were you surprised with the result at the weekend?
Not really. I don't think Roscommon fear, especially this group of Roscommon players, they don't fear Galway or Mayo. Going into it, you'd have to fancy Mayo, obviously, on the back of their league and stuff. And you just worried for Roscommon whether they could have got enough goals to beat Mayo. You would think they'd have to get at least 2, if not 3 goals to win it. And they did get 2, but look, that's football. They got the rub of the green. I mean, they were living on the edge there for a few minutes when Mayo had goal chances. Mayo missed them. They went up the pitch and they got 2. They weren't clear-cut chances either. Like, they made the best of them. So that happens. Mayo then were under a bit of pressure and panicked a bit, and like, if Mayo got the first goal in the game, they might have saw the game out comfortably and won it by 5 or 6. They didn't. They kept Roscommon kept themselves in the game, and then it becomes a bit of a dogfight at the end. Then that happens. The football games tend to go that way. It's never straightforward. But I think Mayo will regroup. They've 6 weeks off now, so they could be a dangerous animal. It's a funny thing to say, but I think everyone will agree. No one wanted to get to that league final, really, given the way the championship was coming around the corner. And just when you're in it, you had to win it, and Mayo win first. But it's very hard then because you peak for a final, it's very hard then to come back the following week and try and copy that again, because I used to see with Currafin, after the All-Irelands, when lads would go in with Galway, you'd expect them to be flying because they were at the end of a season or whatever, but they were often behind when they'd go in with Galway, because it was just that their bodies, I suppose, was telling them that their season was over, and for the rest of the Galway lads, their season was only beginning. So it was very hard to make that transition, and I think Mayo got caught a little bit there. But the Rossies deserved their win, and they won't fear Galway. Galway now will have time to have a look at them. Part of the Galway mentality too would have been looking at another crack at Mayo, so they have to change their mentality. But it's going to be interesting, and the Galway defence are going to be under pressure. They're Roscommon have good forwards. Inda Smith will need stopping, and obviously the 2 Murchas. So it's going to be a tough task for Galway, but they've been pre-warned, so they should be up for the fight.
What's the mood like in Mayo after the weekend, Gizzy?
You have to be careful what you say, but Mayo, there's a lot of Mayo supporters are fickle. I mean, they're talking about winning the All-Ireland one week, and then they're giving out the next, and that's every year. And then you have supporters that'll tell you what they're going to do, and then they turn around the night before or after the Roscommon game and say they were better off losing it because, and they'll have a reason that they were better off losing it. But sure, they're like every supporter. When they win, they can't give enough praise to the group, and when they lose, they can't give out enough about the group, and that happens. But it is what it is. I think to be honest, the GAA need to look at it. Sure, it's daft watching, like, you're out this week in a league final and the following week you're out in championship, and if teams that didn't get to the league final were better off because they have a few weeks off, and you had Galway and Kerry going on team holidays, and Mayo after winning the league final, and they couldn't even have a drink or celebrate it because they were out 7 days later or 6 days later in championship. Sure, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and then it brings in Barry, about the value of a provincial championship. Now, people have talked about the Mayo or Terry seeds now, but realistically, when I'm looking at it, I don't think it matters at all because there's 3 teams going to be coming out of each group.
Yeah, no, I think if I'm reading this right, and again, Paul or Gizzy, I think the draws for that are done already though, and if you're the 3rd seed, you're away from home in your 1st and 2nd game, which isn't ideal. So you could say hypothetically, Mayo could turn around and have a group of Kerry, maybe Tyrone themselves, and a 4th seed. So you have Kerry away and Tyrone away in your first 2 games, and you have a 4th seed. I you know where I'm going here, that they could have come off the back of the Roscommon defeat, have to face Kerry, get bet in that, have to face Tyrone, don't get a result from that, and need to go into playing a 4th seed, who might have had a win or a big win somewhere along the line. It's not easy, and I think that's not. I don't think it's fair that a team that goes and wins the league and then unfortunately loses a Connacht semi-final or Connacht quarter-final or whatever it was, is now 3rd seed, and where you have a team that maybe, cantered through the league, didn't give it the credit that, or the interest that it needed, could end up 1st or 2nd seed. So I think they have to tweak that. I think it was really unfair for Mayo to have to play a league final and then go on and play a first round of the championship 6 days later. And even Gizzy, the training week, they played on Sunday, they weren't going to train till Wednesday. It just changes everything, and it's very hard to get get your messaging across, get the mood of it across. Now, I don't think they helped themselves. I don't think the optics of not playing Toohey and Sam Canlan, I don't think they'll have excuses for that, and they'll say this and that, and Sam Canlan wasn't a guaranteed starter. But I can't see how a fella did such a good job on Shane Walsh on the Saturday and isn't even involved then on the championship the following week. I thought the optics and the messaging around that was a big mistake from them, and I'd say if they had their time over again, it might be something they'd look at.
Just with that now, Galway coming up against Roscommon, everything Roscommon did at the weekend, Gizzy, you could see that it frustrated Mayo. Conor Carroll took his time with his kickouts. Then he'd come out, Roscommon would be passive. They kept the ball. Davy Burke talked about how important it is to keep possession. Galway, on their video analysis work, will be putting a lot into this in the next week.
Yeah, and the thing about that too is Roscommon were lucky to come out. At times they played around at the back and they were under awful pressure, and they were just lucky to get out. I mean, if them balls were turned over, we'd be sitting here giving out that Roscommon should have gone long, maybe just got the ball out of defence or whatever. So they lived dangerously at times. It worked out for them, but that's football. If they got turned over once or twice and Mayo were in and missed the chances. So if Mayo took them chances, it'd be a different story. But Galway just need to be aggressive all over the pitch. If Roscommon, it's all right holding on to the ball and time it, but Galway need to get up there. And even if you have to foul early, so at least you're forcing them in and push players up the pitch and squeeze them in and put right pressure on them, because they did look a bit uncomfortable when, especially after the first few chances that the keeper had for Roscommon coming out. He didn't look overly comfortable. He tended to take it standing a good bit. And that's not ideal, because then it's up to the defence to come to him, whereas you prefer a keeper maybe just to be able to break the line and get out and get runners off his shoulder, then more so than defenders coming into him, because Mayo did squeeze him. So that's a plus that Galway should really go after. And then you just hammer the hammer, Inda Smith and Jeremy Murton need to be really tagged and targeted. Without Liam Silk this year, I don't know who would target Liam Smith to be a guy, or Liam Silk to be a guy I would have put on Inda Smith or Murton. I don't know who you're looking at there now.
Just with that, Gizzy, because we're going to have a look at maybe what could be a potential Galway team in a few minutes to play Roscommon. But the traps Roscommon were setting, Mayo just kept running in. the edge of the D, Davy Burke talked about, that's where he felt Mayo got the majority of scores. Roscommon defended there. Like, there's going to have to be massive patience and for Galway not to fall into the traps that Mayo fell into at the weekend.
Yeah, and you just wonder, is that in the coaching of Mayo, that are they trying to create goal chances? Is that something that they're doing, that, and is that why they're taking the ball in around that D so many times? That are they trying to go for goal too much? Maybe not. Maybe it's just something that you can see. But like, if Galway, if they do that, if Roscommon do that, and Galway have players on the edge of the D like Shane Walsh and Johnny Heaney, Matthew Tierney, like, they should be able to kick from distance. I don't think Mayo get enough out of their forwards from scoring wise. Like, Joe McDonough, for me, through the league, didn't do enough. And again, the lassie, it's grand having a workhorse wing forward and a guy that's putting in tackles and winning breaks. That's all good and it's great. But at the end of the day, forward's job is to score. And if you came off the pitch as a defender marking a guy and he didn't score, that to me is job done for the defender. So you need forwards that can score and put the ball over the bar. So I think Galway will probably look at that, look to get their shooters from maybe 35 metres out, 40 metres out, and get shots off. Like, Mayo just kept trying to run it down towards the goal, and that played into Roscommon's hands. So Galway should look to avoid that, I'm sure.
Is that where Galway will actually possibly look, Barry, bringing in a lot of... Sometimes we have seen a balance to go in the forwards with maybe 2 working wing forwards and the 4 up. But do you actually think Galway will look to maybe get as many shooters in when you talk about this Roscommon system? Because it is going to be important to, as Skizzy was saying there, get these shots off from distance.
Yeah, I think we have them, though. I think Peter Cook will probably start at 12. He can shoot from distance. Paul Conroy, Rob Finnerty, Damien Shane, they can all score from distance. Now, you have to give Mayo, conditions last weekend weren't great now, so I'd say the wind was, particularly, I suppose, when they had the wind, they didn't get shots off. But it's not something that they, as Gizzy said, like, it's not something that they do. Now, to me, again, I thought Fergal Boland was a strange one to get rid of him. I thought he's a guy that offers a little bit more than some of the guys that are there for Mayo at the moment. But look, we'll concentrate on ourselves, and yeah, it's definitely something that they're going to be looking at, is how Roscommon defend. Now, I think Galway had a big advantage, even for the camp itself. Like, the week away, the week in Portugal, I think it couldn't have come at a better time for Galway. It kind of felt a little bit, just from the outside, of the first time maybe that everybody was back together from the All-Ireland final. Shane missed a good bit, obviously. Damien with a long-term injury. Even the likes of Jack Glynn, and was kind of on and off and was carrying a knock and under pressure. From what I gather, like, did a brilliant week in Portugal, got a load of work done, everybody training, really, really good mood. And, even the likes of Cillian McDade kind of finding his way back into things. So I think Galway will have got a big advantage of that, and got a lot of work on how to break down Roscommon. And I think Gizzy made a really good point about fouling, and I think that's an area that's going to be a massive part of the game, is on both sides. I'm fouling on both sides. So first one is, like, Roscommon, it's I'm not sure what's the correct word, is it gamesmanship or cynicism or whatever it is, but they know every single time there's a turnover, they foul. So they foul. So Gizzy turns the ball over. A Roscommon guy will foul him. He'll stand in front of him and just give everybody a chance to get back. To me, if I was Pádraig or Keane on either of these guys, I'd be saying, you do not get fouled. You break that tackle every single time, and even have a word with the ref before the game. Say, look, give us a bit of time. Don't stop it straight away, and let us try and break tackle. And I think at that stage you can catch Roscommon. And then on the other side of it, I can never understand it, why teams are passive when a team's going back and over the pitch or back to their goalie. I think Galway will have something where, even if Conor Gleeson or Bernie Power or whoever's in goal has to push to the corner back spot, there could be a signal where a Damien Comer, rushes the keeper, rushes the fullback, and actually just takes a foul, just holds him up, and then gives everybody a chance to get a squeeze on. Because there was minutes there where Mayo were kind of, Aidan O'Shea or Ryan O'Donoghue were kind of passive and going to a guy, hand pass over his head, or going to a guy, and it was just popped to the wing forward coming back. I think Galway will have to say, look, that doesn't happen. we stop them and we get a full court squeeze. And however that is, if that means that the goalie has to go to corner back and Jack Glynn goes to wing back and everybody pushes one up, I think Galway could get joy out of that. But that's just my agricultural view of it.
It's a great point as well, Izzy, when you consider, because at stages Mayo didn't push up and Roscommon were able to get the ball out easily, so it definitely is something that Galway need to go after next weekend.
Yeah, and I think a key battle then will obviously be in the Smith. And look, I don't know what management will do with him, but I think Sean Kelly is tailor-made for Mindy, and bring Sean Kelly out the field and let him attack him. A few years ago, Mayo put Lee Keegan, when he was on his prime, on him and put him on the back foot, and it worked. I think it was in Croke Park. So I think it'll be a good move for Galway to start there, go after them, and I think you tie him up, put him on the back foot, you're halfway there, aren't you?
Absolutely. He's a big threat. Even we've seen a few years ago in Pearse Stadium, I think one of the Connacht finals, he did cause us trouble, and that aerial ability with Enda Smith is his biggest threat. To get into looking at the team, lads, I'll bring you both in, but
that's Gizzy who'll be in goal.
Yeah, Gizzy, who'll be in goal?
I think by the looks of it, it's going to be Conor Gleeson. But for me, Bernie's a funny one. Bernie's a brilliant keeper, and he's the type of guy that he needs to feel loved. And I think for the league final, not getting his play.
Is he not feeling loved at the minute?
Well, I don't think that would have sat well with him. And he's not the type of guy to look at the bigger picture. So they might have found it hard to convince him why he wasn't playing in that league final. It's small margins. I think Bernie is, from my experience playing with him, you can be confident giving him the ball. He's good on the ball. He actually played outfield for patches with Curve and Intermediates down the years. He's a good kicker of the ball from open play. He doesn't panic on kickouts. He tends to take the best option, and he has an array of kickouts. He has both feet. For me, he's a better option, but I'm not management, and it looks like they fancy Gleeson for some reason a bit more. So it looks like they're going to go with Conor Gleeson, isn't it?
Is why Conor Gleeson is being picked ahead and he's going number one at the minute, Barry? Is it down to the fact that Galway do rely on this long kick out at the middle? Sometimes they'll just go long, and maybe Conor Gleeson just has that bit more distance on his kickouts compared to Bernie Power.
Yeah, to me, there's a couple of things. First and foremost, like, we're kind of judging it on what we've seen at club and what we've seen, patches of games here and there. And I would be of the same opinion as Gizzy. I thought Bernie Power, was in the game he got, I thought he was excellent. And although I did expect Conor Gleeson to start the league final, I was disappointed for Bernie because I thought he put his hand up and showed exactly what he can do. And to me, what he brings is the Galway, particularly, you have to go short on a lot of kickouts now. They just look more comfortable with him. That was one of the more comfortable games I've seen John Daly and these guys in the short kickouts, because when he goes short, they're not scrambling to the sideline to try and pick it up and put them under pressure. So that's number one on Bernie. And as I said, I think he'll be, hopefully, and Gizzy's right, he's a guy that has been there a long time and would see himself as being number one. So hopefully he's still pushing hard. In terms of Conor Gleeson, we don't see Tuesday, Thursday in Loch George, and what he has to offer there. So I would say whoever they pick is the best goalie, but we have to offer an opinion. I think the reason he's in goal is, first and foremost, Pádraig himself probably went through a phase with Galway where we were chopping and changing goalies, and I don't think it suited. And I would say he probably was of the opinion that let's pick a goalie and we stick with him through thick and thin. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but I would say he probably saw a situation where we went through various different goalies and probably never got anyone settled. And then the long kickouts is something that they obviously really, really value, particularly if a team goes full court, really pushing. The ability to kick over the top is a big one. And I've said it before, like I think Galway could, or any team could get an advantage if they try and suck a team as close to your own goal as possible and kick over the top. Conor Gleeson can do that. Now, he has made some really, really good saves as well, in fairness to him. I do worry about how he commands his square, and it's an area that I've shocked that teams haven't tried to exploit Galway a little bit more and try and go long and direct, diagonal and direct, and get it as close to the keeper as possible, because we struggled on that last year through a communication piece from our full back line, and Conor maybe just not being confident enough in coming for it. But I'll go back to the fact that, look, they see these guys Tuesday, Thursday, and at the weekend, they've huge experience with them. They will pick the best team, but we have to offer an opinion. And my opinion would be, at the moment, Bernie just offers that little bit more. But you have to trust Pádraig and the lads that they're making the best decision.
Do we both see Pádraig? Do you both see Pádraig sticking with Conor Gleeson for the Roscommon game?
I think so, yeah.
I said after the last league game, that Conor Gleeson was the man in possession and he'll be in for the league final. I've actually changed my mind. I think Bernie will be in goal. I think the league final, some of the kickouts, I don't think Conor was great. I think they might look at a change, but that's only, again, a silly opinion from me, I suppose.
Will be interesting to see. The backs at the minute, would you both agree that 4 Galway backs are probably settled and there's 2 up for grabs? You'd expect that Jack Lane, Sean Kelly, Dylan McHugh and John Daly are all settled, and it's probably 4 and 7 at the minute that are up for grabs.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like, if you look at the team, probably 4, 7, 12 and 15 are probably the full left-hand side of the pitch is probably the ones up for debate. If Jack Lynn is fit, he plays absolutely, no doubt about it. He offers so much. Dylan McHugh has now, like, you'll be very acutely aware of the progression this fella has made. Like, he's now probably, when they're picking the backs, they're picking Sean Kelly, John Daly, and Dylan McHugh every day, no doubt about it. And then
could you see Dylan McHugh's potential, Barry? I know you were involved with him at 21's level.
Yeah, definitely. Like, he had loads of football, like, and it's just, do you know what as well is a really good lad, like, just a really, really nice fella that you knew when he came into Galway training, like, it meant an awful lot to him. That Galway jersey meant an awful lot to him. And what I really respect about him is, like, probably what was holding him back slightly was his conditioning and his not his physique, but, like, he probably just wasn't as lean and as fit as the Cillian McDades and the Sean Kellys, but he has got himself into unbelievable condition. And, like, to me, I've said this a few times, looks like he has got even fitter, even stronger since the All-Ireland final. I think he offers Galway so much defensively and so much offensively. I think he's just an exceptional footballer, and personally absolutely delighted for him. Yeah.
Who do you see filling 4 and 7, Gizzy?
I think Johnny McGrath actually did. I know he was under pressure in a couple of them games. Ryan O'Donoghue caused some bother, but, like, Ryan O'Donoghue is a brilliant footballer and one of the best inside forwards in the country at the minute, and of course he's going to cause anyone bother, but, like, Johnny McGrath tied to him. Like, if there was no marks, Johnny McGrath probably would have done a bit better, and Ryan O'Donoghue was too, got half a yard and called a couple of marks on him. So I think Johnny McGrath is one guy that I would give a chance to, if I was in the right. Yeah, well, I'd probably play him too, and Jack Lynn at 4. But he's a guy I just liked. He was tigerish. He was getting stuck in, and okay, sometimes referees give fouls against him because he's overly aggressive. But I prefer a lad that way sometimes, especially as the ball goes out the pitch. He's a guy I wouldn't have known much about. I would have heard about him a lot, and obviously he'd been playing club football against Claregalway. His name would come up in analysis and stuff. But I liked him during the league, the games he got. And okay, he was under pressure, as I said, in a couple of games. But most cornerbacks, like sometimes when you're playing cornerback, luck needs to be on your side, because your inches within getting a hand in. If you get a hand in, it looks great. If the forward gets to it first and you get turned, you look terrible. But you're talking an inch here and there. So for me, I'd like to see Johnny McGrath play, to be honest.
Do you expect Johnny McGrath to be a 4 as well, Barry?
Yeah, I do. I have one concern in that if Sean Kelly does go out the pitch a bit, and you're left with Jack Glynn and Johnny McGrath kind of minding the house, they're not the biggest in the world. And I think that might come into the consideration when it kind of comes down between Sean Fitzgerald and Johnny McGrath. I would expect
you do have Liam Mulcahy and Owen Kelly, who played the start of the league as well, who are options.
Yeah, well, Owen Kelly's certainly an option, but I'm not sure. I from what I gather, he'll be under pressure to get back. And I would say it's probably a straight battle between Sean Fitzgerald and Johnny McGrath. I would like to see Johnny McGrath start again. I think he brings big energy to it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of yourself, Gizzy. Like he's just on his toes the whole time. He's aggressive. He's abrasive. He is a Cardiff fan footballer, and he's not afraid to shirk a challenge. And I would like to see him in there. I think he brings something different to it, and that's where I would go for. Yeah.
Is 7 between Ciaran Hernan, Daniel O'Flaherty, and do you move Carl Sweeney back or not?
I'll throw a curveball into this. I think John Maher has been excellent for Galway, and I thought he had a really good league final. Maybe, not to finish the article by any stretch of the imagination, but again, in terms of energy, they could look, if he's pushing for a place, they could look at pushing Killian McDade to 7. So I throw that into the mix as well.
That's a good point, Barry, because every team has a 7 now who will, like, if you look at the best teams, Conor Myler, Gavin White, Jack McCaffrey's, it would definitely give Galway something different, because probably is something they're missing with Kieran Malloy being injured as well.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know. Like, I'm not, that's only me, again, driving in the car and having to think about the Galway team. And like Killian, when we were involved with the 21s, Killian was wing back and had an exceptional year for us, and such an engine, so athletic, so good on the ball, coming from deep, could cause teams problems. And as you said, like if you've Dylan McHugh one side, Killian McDade another side, and John Daly holding the centre, you have a strong half back line. Now, that's not saying Ciaran Hernan, I think, has done really, really well. I think he's probably in pole position to start at 7. Really good footballer. Pádraig obviously trusts him and has big experience with him from the under-20s. So if I was to put the house on it, I'd say it'll be Dylan McHugh, John Daly, Ciaran Hernan. But it wouldn't take me by complete shock if I saw Killian McDade in that spot.
Do you go with McDade there? Is he?
Yeah, it's a good option. It's a good option, and I think he played there last year for a bit.
Yeah,
early days.
His championship.
Yeah, so it's not. But is he available? Like, it's not a good sign that we haven't seen him the last few weeks. I'm sure if they wanted to get him to play a full game this weekend, then or in 2 weeks' time, then the league final, we would have seen him for 10 or 15 minutes. That's just an area. And when we did see him, thinking back just the Mayo game, I don't know what he played after that, but like he was heavily bandaged and stuff. It didn't look great. Carl Sweeney would be a guy I'd like to see back there. For me, if they don't go with McDade, I'd like to see Carl Sweeney in a wing back position. I know they bring him out. He wears 15 and comes out around, obviously, from what we can see. But I'd like to see him at wing back. I know from Salt Hill, watching him play with Salt Hill, like he loves getting forward from that position. So he'd be a good option at 7 as well. So either or for me. I thought the league final, Hernan was a bit passive. Like he went to take on a shot there at one stage, and there was 2 Mayo guys coming at him, and he still took on the shot, even though like he telegraphed it that it was going to get blocked down. And that's my only fear, is that like that's a league final. It's championship now, it goes up a grade. And one thing you need to be is you need to be a bit more at it. You can't afford to be passive playing inter-county championship football. And that's one thing that might come against them when they're sitting down picking the team.
Would you say Paul Conroy and John Mayer midfield, Gizzy?
Yeah, and then maybe they might look at it, if they're going to play Killian and play midfield, they might look at moving Paul Conroy into the 11 position, maybe, or into the full forward line, maybe. I don't know. Brian Stack is a good footballer. He could cause Paul problems if he puts Paul on the back foot, if they put Paul to 11. But it's hard. No, they now have 3 good midfielders to pick from, to be fair. John Maher played very well the last day, and has the last few years been a decent footballer for Salt Hill. So I think he'll start. He'll have to start. And then it's a case of, I suppose, if Killian can't play, then it's Paul and John Maher midfield.
Would you stick with Paul and John Mayer, Barry?
Yeah, I would, but I'm not picking the team. And as I said, I don't see exactly, and they have to look at what their game plan is, because if you move it on, like up top, right, everything going according to plan and everyone being fit, you're probably nearly guaranteed that Rob Finnerty will start, Damien will start, Shane will start, Matthew Tierney will start, and Johnny Heaney will start. That's 5. So they've only one more, and then you're looking at, do you play Peter Cook? Do you play Cathal Sweeney? What do you do there? So, like, I don't think the experiment of playing Cathal Sweeney 15 and bringing him out worked. I think that, particularly, I think it was Thomas Sullivan for Kerry, kicked 2 points. Like, if you're managing against that, you'll be saying, right, I'm getting a really good footballing cornerback to go out after Cathal Sweeney and try and influence the game a little bit more. So, we don't know. Like, if Peter Cook starts 12, Matthew Tierney, Johnny Heaney in your half forward line, and the 3 boys inside in whatever way, then you're looking at, does Cathal Sweeney go back to 7? That's, I suppose, another option as well. But for me, if Killy McDade isn't fit, it's John Maher and Paul Conroy. But I think if Killy McDade is fit and raring to go, I think you have to play him with Conroy in the middle of the pitch.
The forwards there, Barry was mentioning, Gizzy. Does the forwards just pick as Peter Cook, Johnny Heaney, Matthew Tierney, Robert Finnerty, Damien Comer, Shane Walsh?
Probably does, yeah. But it's a good complaint it's a good headache for goal management to have, that they have options now. Tomo came on in a couple of league games and played well and can get scores. In fairness, like, he's cute, he can get marks. But that seems to be their best forward line. I hope Johnny Heaney, has he recovered? I know he didn't go on the team holiday and stuff, but he's the Jim Ruck of Galway, really. He gets around the pitch, puts in awful work. He's a link man between defence and attack, and then he can get scores, and he pops up at the end of moves, and he's just unbelievable that his level hasn't dropped over. Like, he must be 7 or 8 years involved to go at this stage, and like the level is, it never seems, you would think a player like him, that the level would start to drop as he, I'm sure, I don't know what age he is now, but the level should start to drop, but he hasn't. And like, again, last year against Kerry, even in Booner and Crow Park, popping up at the end of moves, it's just unbelievable. So I think Johnny Heaney's a big one. If he's available, it's a big plus for Galway. They're a big fan of Matthew Tierney, but again, no more than hurling. He was passive against Mayo. You can't afford at this level, because the tough teak defenders will go after you. Especially the Roscommon boys, the Dailies, if they smell weakness. So Tierney needs he doesn't seem to be the same type of player since Shane Walsh came back. Whether maybe taking the freeze off him and stuff has affected him, but hopefully he'll find form again, because he did start very well in the league. And we need him going well. And then Patrick Kelly is a lovely footballer too. We haven't seen much of him this year. So it's a good complaint to have for Galway. You can still move Paul Conroy into the forwards. But I think the 6 you named are probably the 6 that should start realistically.
Yeah, it just really feels the biggest position probably to choose from ultimately is probably going to be 7, Barry.
Yeah, because there's loads of options, and it's a position that teams launch a lot of their attacks from. So it's one of the most important. It's one of the most important positions on the pitch. And just back to the Johnny Heaney thing, like if you think about it, he played fullback, or was it fullback or cornerback in Porrick's first couple of league games.
Yeah,
number 4. Like he's just so versatile. And like I did a thing with Paddy Power before the All-Ireland final last year, and they were looking for a kind of an outside bet. I said Johnny Heaney for first goal scorer, because he just, as you said, Gizzy, he just pops up in these.
You were nearly right there.
I wasn't far off it. Yeah. I definitely would have tweeted that one out anyway. But like he just pops up late, and he's just so difficult to track, and teams are really, really wary of those late runs. But his position, or his role this year, has completely changed. He's gone to nearly an orthodox 11, where he's kind of coming for ball, popping ball off, and trying to get a couple of scores. Like up in Armagh, he was the one that got the scores when they really needed it. Against Monaghan, he was the one that got the score when they really needed it. And he's vital to everything Galway do, and they build everything around him. But just one other point, and it might be something that Tomo comes into the mix for. The marks is going to be really important, because like space is going to be at a premium. And Roscommon don't really engage around the 45. They engage a little bit deeper to their own goal. So they might be looking and saying, look, if we can get the Conroys and the Cooks and the good kickers of the ball on the ball 50 metres out, and just pop a little 20-metre pass into Rob, who's good at getting marks, and Tomo, if he was there, Damien, good at getting marks, that might be where they get scores from, rather than trying to get scores, building scores from open play with 15 behind the ball, camped on the edge of the D.
Yeah, no, the marks could definitely have an impact on the championship as it progresses. But that's all on our show for today. Thanks a million to Ciaran McGrath and Barry Cullinane for coming on.
The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie. We are now delighted to announce our second sponsor of the podcast. Harper Finlay are a professional service recruitment company operating nationwide, and are dedicated to helping people find their dream job.